Well, welcome and thank you for joining us on today's Ask the Mayor program. We have a special guest with us today, Milbury Langford, who is the attorney for the Water and Sewer Authority, but she is also this year's president of the Douglas County Rotary Club. Please stay tuned for today's Ask the Mayor program. Well, thank you for joining us today on Ask the Mayor. With me today is a very special guest, Milbury Langford, who is the attorney for the Water and Sewer Authority. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to join us.
Thank you for inviting me, Mayor.
Not only with your busy schedule at the Water and Sewer Authority, but you are the current president of the Douglas County Rotary Club. Is that correct?
It is correct, Mayor. I'm finishing up a year of service, and it's been a pleasure.
All right. Well, can you tell us a little bit about the Rotary Club and some of the things that the Rotary International does and also the local Rotary Club?
I'd be happy to. Rotary International is an organization of 1.2 million members worldwide. It's in over 60 different countries, but we meet locally here as the Rotary Club of Douglas County. We have about 45 members, a good cross-section of community leaders, business people, different vocations. We meet every week for a meeting. In fact, recently we had the honor of having you as our guest, but every week we have a meeting with a weekly program, which is interesting. It totals up to about 45 programs a year. Again, a good cross-section of things that are of interest to our members. But one of the most important things, the things I like the most about Rotary is we call it the world's leading service organization. It was created in 1905 by a lawyer, which I find interesting being a lawyer myself. And the reason he created Rotary is he wanted to get together, Paul Harris was the founder, wanted to get together with other business people. He figured out real quick, if you only hang out with attorneys, you don't have a lot of fun. So it started in 1905. Its focus has always been service above self. And so we do a number of service projects, not only our weekly meetings for fun and fellowship, but service projects in the community and in the world.
You do, and actually what you do at the end of the year in the local schools, I think is tremendous. Can you tell us a little bit about what the local Douglas County Rotary Club does for some of the students?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Mayor. Let me back up and say that Rotary International, then our club also has adopted a number of focus, I should say. The primary one being on children and youth, realizing that that is the future, not only of our community and our world. So we focus on children, we focus on literacy, we focus on clean water, which I find especially interesting, and also health and human development. And it's on that health issue that we've had the unique opportunity to get involved in the 4 local high schools. We do every year at each high school an AIDS awareness program, and that is just to share the true facts about a devastating disease. I think for a long time there's been the perception that it's not a problem that we or our children have to worry about. And unfortunately, the numbers of the fastest rising populations of new cases is in young people, is in young women and men under the age of 30 in our own country. And so with that concern and Rotary's focus on health, we've worked with the school board, and in fact, Mayor, you have chaired this program for us for a number of years and helped line up the speakers from AIDS Atlanta. So we have folks that are heterosexuals that have contracted the disease a number of different ways, sometimes through a blood transfusion, any number of ways. But they come and they just share the facts. It is an abstinence-based program because the only way to be sure that you never get AIDS is to follow the safe health guidelines. So that's been a great program for us.
You know, it really is. For a few years, I've had the opportunity to actually join those folks in the school. And it's interesting, Milbury, I'll tell you. When those folks initially come in to talk to the students, you know, they come into the assembly and they're talking to each other and having a good time and just being young adults. But shortly after the presentation starts, and these people tell them about their life and what's happened to their life and some of the disadvantages to their careers, then it's almost like, well, you could hear a pin drop for the remainder of the session. And so the work that Rotary is doing in those areas, I know, I've seen it firsthand. But some of the things that your Rotary Club does is just thank you to some important people. And one example that I can think of right now is what you do for the teachers. You give them, well, tell us a little bit about what you do once a year.
Every October we do what we call Apples for Teachers. And that means that we go to every single elementary school and we give an apple to every single teacher, school employee, administrator, lunchroom personnel, just janitor, everyone that has an impact in the education of our children. And that's fun. We pair up and a couple of us go to each school, so just about everybody in the club is involved, and we just go classroom to classroom, and it's so interesting to see the kids get so excited to see dressed up business folks come in, interrupt class, give an apple to the teacher. I get so tickled because so many of the kids will say, "Can I have the apple, Mrs. So-and-so? Can I have the apple?" And we make sure we say, "No, this is an apple for a job well done for your teacher, your administrator, your lunchroom worker." So that's one of the highlights every year that everybody in the club gets involved in.
Well, you and the club do a tremendous job. And if there are people listening to our program today that might be interested in joining the Rotary Club, what's the process and what are the minimum requirements?
There's a couple of things you can do. The first thing I would invite anyone to do that's either interested in becoming a member or interested in just learning more about Rotary is to go to www.rotary.org, and there you can find out not only about international initiatives, but different successes in the world on projects. You can locate the meeting location for ours. We meet at West Central Technical College at 11:45 for fellowship, 12 o'clock for lunch every Monday. If we have Douglas County residents that work in Atlanta or Marietta, you can also locate a club that's more convenient to your work site. If you're interested in becoming a member, the best way is to talk to a Rotary member. But if you go, "I don't know who a Rotary member is," either look on the website. You can actually do an inquiry that says, "I'm interested in joining." If you will give your information at rotary.org, we'll have somebody from our membership committee contact them and actually invite them to be a guest at our meeting. If they come and they're interested, then we have just a basic application. Again, we're looking for a wide range of vocations to be a part of our club. We ask you to come and visit a couple of times, so we give you an orientation on what's expected. We have a couple of fundraisers we do every year, and we ask all members to be involved in that. Then we have a process where the board of directors, we have 4 directors and then other officers in the club, review the application, accept the nomination. We present it to the club. I've never had anyone be voted down, but we want to make sure that everybody agrees because we work so closely together.
Sure.
We really are friends, and then we are happy to induct new members into the club. If I can jump to the fundraising, since that kind of
Absolutely.
You've been involved, you've been with us for a number of years, and so you are aware, but we have 2 annual events, and even if you're not interested in becoming a member, you may want to support our efforts through these opportunities. In the fall, we have what we call the Big Deal Plus. We sell 300 raffle tickets at $100 each, and then we have a party to celebrate not only the fundraising event, but to do an overview of what's going on in the Rotary world, what projects we've had as successes.
Everybody that buys a ticket is invited to the party, right?
Everybody that buys a ticket is invited to the party, and also if you're a prospective member, if you just want another opportunity in a more casual setting to come and check out what we do, we meet at the Douglasville Downtown Conference Center. So where we've met for several years, and we have a drawing. The first place prize winner, and it's not always the first draw, we like to mix it up sometimes, is a $10,000 winner, and then we call it the Big Deal Plus because we give a consolation prize to the second place of $2,500. We also will have a number of door prizes throughout the evening, but that's our fall fundraiser. And then this year we had in the spring, our 25th annual Rotary Golf Tournament at St. Andrews. This year was a really special year. You'll recall, Mayor, we had recently lost a valued member when Lofton Fouts passed away shortly before our golf tournament. Unexpectedly, the club made the unanimous decision to do this year's golf tournament in honor of Lofton Fouts. But we have about 50 teams come out and play with us. We run a morning flight, an afternoon flight. It's a lot of fun. It's a full day. We have lunch to our golfers and even dinner and some door prizes and raffles at the end. So what's really great about Rotary is we do great service projects, we do fundraisers, but we have lots of fellowship together.
Absolutely, and all of that money goes directly back into the community, is that correct?
Absolutely. In fact, we're maybe not unique, but what we do well. We have club dues, members pay dues that actually fund the club operating expenses, but our club has its own 501c3 foundation, so that all of our fundraising monies go into that special tax designated foundation, and then the foundation turns around and spends those dollars on the projects. We do more than 23 projects both locally and internationally, and so we just have a great history of different things that we do.
There is a great history of Rotary International, Rotary around the world, but let me thank you personally for your dedication and your success. During this year, you've done a wonderful job, and thank you for being with us today on Ask the Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.
During this drought, we need everyone's help. Please make water conservation a way of life. Visit northgeorgiawater.org for more information. Thank you.
Let me tell you a little bit about how I got involved in this. Actually, I started driving race cars at the age of 19 on the rough and tumble dirt tracks over in Alabama, and did all kinds of racing that you can think about. I actually got to the point where I was driving a NASCAR dash car on some of the biggest racetracks in the country. I've raced at Daytona, Talladega, Charlotte, all of those long racetracks. The longest race was actually 300 miles that I've ever driven. And the first question someone usually asks you, how can you drive 300 miles without going to the bathroom? I can't drive an hour down the interstate. And the answer to that is easy. Most of these races are in the summertime when it's really, really hot. And you actually sweat a tremendous amount. So the fluids in your body actually come out that way. I brought some. That's the answer. And that's the question that I'm asked more than anything else is that. And the reason is I brought some of the stuff that you wear when you're driving. This is a 3-layer suit. It's made out of Nomex, and it's similar to 3 layers of wool. If you look at this thing, I mean, it is tremendously hot. But they also require for safety that you wear shoes that are the same way. You have to wear gloves when you're driving, fireproof gloves. One of the hottest things is this thing goes over your head before you put your helmet on. And it's a wool sock, basically. And speaking of socks, you actually wear fire retardant socks. So, and a helmet goes on top of your head after you put this other thing on. So oftentimes it's in excess of 130 degrees in a car because the exhaust system really is right in front of you. The most important thing for those of us who race a lot in the summertime is this little piece of equipment here, which is nothing more than a shirt with all kinds of veins in it. This plugs up to a system that's in the car, which is basically an air conditioning system, if you want to think of it that way. This circulates ice-cold water through these veins, both front and back. Oftentimes you're sitting out on the grid area for 20, 30 minutes in hot temperatures. You really couldn't do it without this thing. It's fairly simple the way it works. You put ice in it. You put ice and water in it, and internally it has a pump. So it circulates the water through this shirt, which keeps you nice and cool. It goes back, and the water's a little bit warmer, and it's cooled or chilled by the ice that's in that container, and it makes another loop, and it's a constant closed loop. But what I'd like to do is show you a little bit about the kind of racing I'm doing today. Remember, I told you I'd raced on a lot of the larger racetracks around the country. and did that for a number of years. And actually, I thought I had retired. About 15 years, I kind of stepped away from racing for a number of reasons. It was very expensive. It was taking time away from my family and really other obligations like working and making a living and those kind of things. And a couple of folks here in town, Pete Frost, who is the executive director of the Water and Sewer Authority, Jim Kellogg, those guys were doing road racing, which I had never been involved in road racing. And they encouraged me to come see some of their races, and I did. Then they encouraged me, Mickey, you really need to get involved in this. And I said, now let me get this straight. You guys go all over the country, you spend lots of money, very competitive, and you don't make any money. There's no purse money in this. And so I went to a couple more races, and I started thinking, you know, I've got a lot of racing experience. I could probably do this and really show these guys what road racing is all about. But little did I know, it is much more difficult than anything I had really ever undertaken, because in road racing you use all components of your body. You drive with one hand, you shift gears with the other hand, you use one foot for braking and the other one for the gasoline and brakes. And so you don't really have a lot of time to think about much of anything, and that's the reason I like car racing, because it takes your mind away from everything else you're doing. I really think everyone needs some kind of hobby that gets them away from the daily pressures of what you're doing. And car racing does it. As a matter of fact, you don't remember what happened the previous lap because you're always thinking about what's going to go on in the next one. So what I'm going to do today is take you to 3 racetracks, which are all racetracks that are fairly close, down to Savannah, Georgia. It's a flat track, 2 miles. Road Atlanta, which is up off 85. Many of you may have been there. There's a new racetrack over right outside Birmingham, Barber Speedway. Those of you who are from Alabama may remember the Barber family. They own the dairy that supplied all the milk. And actually, one of their sons took the business over, retired, spent all the money building the most beautiful racetrack you've ever been to. I encourage you to go over there. So what I'd like to do now is just take you on a sample ride, really. These are ride-alongs, just like you see on TV, except you're going to find that what you see on TV things happen pretty slowly. Here, you make a lot of 180-degree turns, 90-degree turns. You go over hills when you can't see on the other side of the hill at a pretty high rate of speed. And you're going to see all of that today. The other thing is, in road racing, you race in all the weather conditions. We race in the rain. Now, normally, if it's raining, and I should have brought the tires. I didn't have time today to bring everything. But you have special tires, rain tires that you put on. But oftentimes, you start on what are called slicks. They have no tread. And it starts raining during the race. And I'll show you what happens when you're on slicks and it starts raining, because it's akin to driving on ice, if you've ever done that before. So what we'll do, we'll start. This first Roebling garage, it's going to show you kind of the garage area. We work in all kinds of conditions. You'll see 4 cars here, Pete Frost, Jim Kellogg. This is the area where we are. The little blue car on the left is mine. And there's actually a race going on while we're back working on our cars. That's Pete Frost's car, that number 6. Now, the 4 cars you saw there, 3 of us are actually in the same class. We race against each other. But we travel together, we help each other, as you can see from there. So this particular racing supposedly is not very competitive, but you're going to see some things here that'll probably change your mind. Now, this is down at Savannah. There were about 350 cars here. This is a 2-mile racetrack, so there's some footage later on that will show you what it's like out on the racetrack, but this is the way it looks in the garage area. Now, notice one thing while we're showing other clips. You'll see these gauges. These are the gauges on the dash. These are the brake gauges. Now, you can see when they move, and you'll see them move a little bit. That's when you're actually applying the brakes. Tachometers on the left, water and oil pressure are the other 2 gauges. Now, there are all kinds of different cars in this type racing. This is a controlled access area. And you'll see two rows of cars. This row that I'm turning to go up are the cars that qualified faster than, of course, that other row. And so I'll stop here. Now, this car doesn't have a reverse in it. Very few of the cars have reverse. So you want to make sure when you pull into a grid area, it's the one that you're supposed to be in. So I'll wait for someone to tell me. Now, some of the cars do. You'll see a very expensive BMW there. I'm sure he's got a reverse. Now, you'll see the next fella that's standing out there, he's pointing right or left. I wouldn't want his job, I can tell you that. He's telling me whether you start on the inside or the outside. So you'll notice these cars are weaving around. And I'm doing the same thing. You can see a little bit of the driver's steering wheel. This is a camera, just a regular video camera that's inside the car on a permanent mount that's put in there. Depending on how I set the thing up, sometimes you can look through the rear view mirror, which is up the top, and you can see what's actually going on behind you. It's pretty difficult to see the gauges here. What we use this for is actually to critique ourselves on how good we did on driving. The tachometer, there's not enough time to look at the tach and see when you're shifting, if you're shifting at the appropriate RPMs. But when you come back and watch this on a laptop, it shows up very clearly. So we've just advanced now. We're within about a half mile of the actual start. You'll notice the cars are getting a little bit faster. Now, the one thing you'll notice when we get out on the front straightaway, two things. It's hard to see the flagman, so you have to kind of bump your way around to get to a position where you can see the flagman. The other thing you'll notice at this racetrack, when we get out on the front straightaway, it's 3 lanes halfway down the front straightaway. So if you're trying to pass cars 3 wide, which you'll see me try to do, better be back in line before you get to the point where it narrows back, or you're going to be off in the boondocks. So at this point, you're beginning to get closer. You're beginning to think about what you're going to do when you start to race. This is a 5,000-foot straightaway. You could land an airplane on this thing, but you can't see the flag. He's in that little white building to the left between the cars. You'll see me move over where I can see it. Okay, drop the green flag. Remember, it's 3 lanes here. Now, these cars are faster than me, or qualified faster than me, but I just made it back in before we got to the 2-lane car. Now remember, these tires are cold at this time. You'll see the car up front, he's kind of wiggling around, and notice right here, I almost lost control of it. So we're under racing speed. Now notice what's just appeared on the windshield. Some raindrops. So it had already rained a little bit here. Notice I had to let off the gas a little bit just to get out of that turn. But notice the raindrops have disappeared. These are long racetracks. Remember, this is 2 miles around here, so it's actually not raining on the east end of the racetrack, so you're back to full speed there. Notice it's raining a lot more now than it was raining last time. So much that you slow down. Now, the one thing you never want to do, even when it's not raining, is apply your brakes in a turn. You always want to brake in a straight line. So it was raining harder there. So one thing you do is when you pick up speed, it blows the rain off of the windshield, but there's also a higher risk of losing control and running off of the racetrack, so it's a compromise, whether you have a clean windshield or you're spinning off of the racetrack. Now, we're going to cut away here. I think this thing cuts away. It takes us back to the front straightaway. Look what's happening at the end of the front straightaway. Torrential rain. So I decided I'm going to slow down a little bit before I get there. Now, since we started this race on slicks, this is just like driving on ice. So instead of 135 or so here, you know, we're probably down to 60 miles an hour. But in true racing spirit, when there are cars in front of you, whether you can see too well or not, I pick up a position here. All right. So we'll cut away from this and go to a different racetrack. Now, remember, this racetrack we just came from was flat. There were no hills. And so let's go to Road Atlanta and show you what a start is like at Road Atlanta when the cars, or at least one of the drivers, is not attentive to what he's doing on the start. Now, this little car in front of me has a lady driving, a little gray car. So there's some females that actually race, and she's a pretty darn good driver. Actually, she was ahead of me until she spun out. So this is coming over the bridge, underneath the bridge, and down for the start. But notice what happens here. I almost end up in the grass. Bam, he hit me. Bam, he hit me again. Then he goes back. So what you do is you just kind of file that away in your memory. You'll be around that guy later on, and you'll remember what happened. This is about a mile down this back straightaway, but you're up and down hills. Now at the end of this, we're going to cut away and show you what it looks like from outside the car. And then we'll go back inside the car. This is at the end of that straightaway. Left to right and up over underneath the bridge. Now this is what it looks like, not the same lap, but the same position on the racetrack. Now here you can't see anything. You short shift here, which means you don't go to maximum RPM. So you don't spin the tires. When a car goes over a hill, it lifts the weight off of it and it'll spin the tires if you're turning too many RPMs. So that's what it's like to ride around Road Atlanta. The last racetrack is right outside Birmingham, Barber Speedway. This is by far the nicest racetrack I've ever been to. Now watch what happens when the guy tries to block you. I'm going to pass him on the outside. He comes over, puts the brakes on, and guess what happens? The car comes by. Look at this little car shooting flames out. This thing was fast. So I actually ended up finishing second in this race. Later on, I got by these guys. So that's what it's like to drive a little road racing car. Well, thank you for joining us on today's SMA program, and a special thanks to Milbury Langford for taking the time out of her schedule to talk with us about her role as president of the Douglas County Rotary Club. And thank you for joining us on today's Ask the Mayor program.